Now, this is often missed in our discussion of African consciousness. We often dismiss Black identity as something that's subordinate, something that we have to move beyond. Well, the Kemites never moved beyond describing themselves as Black as an adjective, it was a color of their skin. And why would you want to move, past it? It's a matter of linking Blackness to your African roots. So we have to understand that the African in America had a special experience in that we had whites all around us. And so as a result of that, we had to really deal with the culture of peoplehood in a very special way. And so over a period of 100, 150 years, after our people could no longer remember what part of Africa we came from, we came to see whether of Fulani roots, Bambara, Igbo, we had intermarried by then and everything else that happened to us. And what we began to see is we had a commonality. And that commonality was the basis for our oppression, but it was also the basis for our love and pride in ourselves, and it was the color of our skin. And so Blackness became a unifying thing for the majority of our people. And Blackness became the shell around which our culture was built. I want to say the shell, because it's not the whole of the culture. Inside of that is both African and New African principles and some other things that come in that we need to get out. So the African in America, because of racism, shaped what's called race consciousness. It is the consciousness of being Black in a society in which whites are still dominating. And it's the consciousness that we must band together as one people. And it is this glue that has created race consciousness. It is the basis for race pride. It produced in the 19th and earlier 20th century race men and race women. It has produced the greatest amount of unity that any people have on the planet. As I pointed out before, the Montgomery bus boycott, 97% of Black people supporting that. Or Barack Obama, 96% in his first term supporting him. Or in this recent election, 89% of Black people going behind Biden. But it's not just in electoral politics, and it's not just in movements, but it is in marriage, as we pointed out. Until recently, 97% of Blacks were married to Blacks. And it's still, the marriage rate of Black to Black is still higher than any group other than whites. But ours is based on the fact that we like each other. Theirs is based on the fact that they don't like anybody else and have trouble with each other. So this race consciousness, no Garvey movement without race consciousness. Race consciousness woke the Honorable Marcus Garvey up, because the African in the Caribbean doesn't have to be race conscious. They're not facing a lynch tree or a Ku Klux Klan in their face every day. But our race consciousness is a race consciousness without hate, except sometimes we've internalized it. So the key point to make is that when Blacks come in contact with whites, Black takes on a different meaning because it is in relationship to whites. And it is because also, as W.B. Du Bois said, we end up facing double consciousness. That is, some of us see ourselves through the eyes of others. The majority of Blacks did not see themselves through the eyes of others. Those are field blacks. The majority of them didn't. Some of them had elements of that in their identity, some elements of not liking themselves, some elements of not fully loving themselves. But basically, field blacks saw themselves as a nation. They had a term for it. Today, we could call it the Black nation. But they saw themselves as a nation. And they viewed those who took on their definition of self from the white man as no nation ends. I don't use that word here, but you know what I mean. No nation ends, meaning people who wanted to be white, but would never be accepted by whites and wanted to have nothing to do with Black people. In one slave narrative, there's a formerly enslaved African who had adopted a light-skinned brother who had no parents. This is what commonly happened in slavery. At the end of slavery, this guy goes out and gets in the military and then sends his father a letter. And the letter says, he's had no contact with any Black people since he left him. And he has no interest in Black women. He preferred any woman other than his own kind. And the father said, I took that insurance policy I had for him and tore it up, meaning he wasn't his child anymore. If he didn't respect the love that he received from Black people, if he wanted to be a no nation status, let him be that. And today we have some no nation Negroes. Clarence Thomas is a no nation Negro. When I was at the Million Man March, I remember seeing a sign a brother was carrying. It said, Clarence Thomas should have never been born. The problem is we had enslavement, so it birthed some Clarence Thomases. But don't think that because someone came from the house, they were automatically a no-nation Negro, because many in the house didn't love their masters. Many in the house married those in the field, and most in the house had family members in the field. Ella Baker's mother's mother, her grandmother, had been a house slave. Her father was a slave master. He wanted to marry her off to another light-skinned Negro, and she refused. They took her out of the house, put her in the field, and then she married Ella Baker's grandfather, who was the blackest, smartest, bravest Black man she could find. And Ella Baker tried to do the same thing. So this confrontation of Black in the white world put us in a position where Black took on a new meaning. And for some of us, it meant a low self-definition. For some of us, it meant a hatred for self. But for others, it was a source of pride. And for those who took on the first mentality, many of them, by the end of enslavement, underwent transformation over generations and began to embrace a greater sense of self over time. So this is first reason we need transformation. But we need to really appreciate the roots of the transformation. And the roots is in your Blackness. So this is in the construction of what becomes African-American culture. Embracing Blackness is at the foundation of it.